Since the last tutorial, I've gone ahead and followed the same steps in tutorial 1 to bring in a JPEG image that is this San Luis Obispo parcel map. You'll notice now in my XREF manager that I have two XREFs. One is this PDF, which is the tax map, and one is actually an image, a JPEG image, which is the Slow City parcels. I went through the exact same series of commands. The only thing is when you're working with an image, there are a couple of other commands that might be helpful, such as Draworder, DR, or the keyboard shortcut, where you can set an object to go to the front or back. In this case, I needed to move the image behind the PDF so that I could see them both at the same time. I also made a couple of layers. I made a layer just for the tax map and a layer just for the parcel map so that I can really easily toggle them off and on. And then I also made some new layers for blocks. I will trace around the city blocks, and for building footprints. With the blocks layer current, I'm going to go ahead and start using the Polyline tool, and for the blocks I'm going to turn off my parcel map, leaving just the tax map. And really, in many cases, I want the blocks to line up. Sometimes that's not true, but in this case I do want the blocks to line up. So I'm going to use the Polyline command, PL. I'll use the extents of my cursor and start a little bit beyond the edge of the block to draw my polyline, and extend a bit beyond the edge of the block. I'll do the same thing for the next road. I could also use the offset command at a set distance. And then the same thing for the upper boundary, and the same thing for the lower boundary. And you'll notice that these are less and less aligned because oftentimes the parcel maps are traced from aerial photography, and oftentimes streets are just not quite parallel. I'll do the same thing for my vertical lines. In this case, I want to turn my ortho mode off. Polyline again. To capture that diagonal. Great. So this is a good kind of scaffold for the blocks. You know, here actually this block is present, so I'll use my grip edit with ortho mode turned on to extend these lines, escape to deselect. So now let's use our trim and fillet commands in order to cut some of these lines out. First, trim. If you hit trim and then hit enter twice or space twice, it enters into this special trimming mode where it will automatically detect the nearest boundary, and it will automatically trim the segments that you select to those boundaries. So that can be pretty efficient. You can also use a crossing window with trim, so I've been just clicking, but I could click and hold and select all of those tails at the same time and trim them all at once. The same thing here. Remember, a crossing window always starts from the right side. Let me grab these up top. And then, just as we had explored before, I can use the fillet command, fillet F, with a radius of 0. So I hit F, enter, R, enter, 0, enter, and I can get these to trim. Great! So now I have successfully traced my blocks, and again I'll leave it up to you how much of this you would like to fix or how much of it you would like to be true to the underlay. Now I want to start putting in some building footprints, so I'm going to select my other layer, right click and make it active, my building footprints. I'm going to turn off the tax map and turn on the parcel map. Hopefully you can still see your CAD. And then let's go ahead and just start tracing some of these building footprints. The funny thing here is that it's not always perfectly aligned with the property line, and again, oftentimes these are traced from aerial photographs, and there's a lot of perspective distortion So I will leave it up to you as to how true you want to be to these images, or if you want to straighten things up a bit. Okay, let's use the Polyline command. I'm going to use a little artistic license and set this building right at the edge of that property line by turning on one of my object snaps, and then I will turn my object snaps back off. I'm going to go to about there. You might need to turn your orthographic mode off if your buildings are at weird angles. And in this case I would like to be perpendicular. So I'm going to type in on the fly, PER for perpendicular, and hit enter. And then hit C. If it's the last segment in a polyline, you can hit C, as you can see here, C, enter to close. And now I've just created that polyline. So basically you'll do the same thing. You'll move around the city and try to capture the outlines of these buildings using Polyline as a way to trace. In a case like this, I've started tracing this building, and I get back here and I know that it should align with the line below. So instead of just going really haphazard, I can use my object snaps, and by making sure that a parent intersection is chosen, and then I can move my cursor down to this point, don't click, move my cursor back up, and you'll see that AutoCAD is giving me essentially a guideline to hold me straight in alignment. I'll do the same thing here to hold that edge, and then again I'm going to make this perpendicular to the property line, and again hit C for close. And now I've just traced my next building and the back edges are aligned. This building is a simple rectangle, so I'll just use my rectangle command from that corner to approximately here. I've just completed my first block, which I will look by turning off my parcel map, and you can see there are the building footprints for that block. I would continue with the same process for the rest of the blocks. Let's make a new layer, and let's call it Building Hatch. I want to select one of my gray colors. This layer will be used in order to poché the buildings. And in AutoCAD, the command for that is hatch. BH is the keyboard shortcut for boundary hatch. And let's go ahead and, as being prompt, let's select one of our buildings. By default, AutoCAD selects the ANSI 131 pattern, but you could select from any of these menus and you'll see a variety of hatch options. It's even possible to make your own custom hatches or download additional hatches from the internet, but that's pretty advanced. You can adjust the rotation angle or the scale. Just to illustrate this, let's go ahead and modify the scale. And there you can see a little space between the lines. If you choose the Select Boundary option, we could add additional buildings to the selection. Keep in mind that by default, AutoCAD will link all of those hatches to each other. So that means if I ever wanted to make an edit, I would end up having to erase that entire hatch group and come back and rehatch all of those. Or you have an option up here that says Create Separated Hatches, which would make each of them an individual hatch. Go ahead and hit your right mouse key to finish the command, and now we have our hatches. I should have set my building hatch layer current before I made those. I didn't do that, so now I have to come back, select these objects, and in my Properties Inspector under the Object Display, change these to my building hatch layer, and now you can see that they have taken on the color of the building hatches. I do tend to actually leave a little bit of space between the lines. you can play with in your PDF viewer and your PDF preview. You can play with getting that spacing right so that you're happy with the density of the gray and the tone of the gray, but you're on your way to making a figure ground map. This is a good time to save your file. Once you finish tracing all of your building outlines and pochéing your drawing to get it how you would like it to look, you can go ahead and establish a page size that you would like to print this at by going back to the previous set of tutorials, creating a layout tab. You can set a scale for the drawing and a scale for your viewport, and then go ahead and print. Enjoy!